Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Ding, ding, school is in session. He is back. The bow tie wearing historian Zach is back with us. Hello, good morning, my friend.
Hey, good morning, Wilson. How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. Listen, I just got to say thanks for well, I am hearing from so many people watching these segments with you, and they're like, I knew a little bit about that, but you guys just told me so much more. And that's kind of the whole thing we're trying to do here.
I'm having so much fun doing this with you on a weekly basis. It's been great, Wilson. I tell you what.
It's fun stuff, and it's interesting how some of this, and we've done a few, how history repeats itself sometimes. And well, there's kind of an interesting thing today. Last week we talked to you on Thursday, and that was a big day for history. And today, Thursday, is a big day in history. I think you were saying it's 57 years ago today, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So last week we talked about voting rights, and this week we're going to talk about civil rights, because 57 years ago today we get the announcement of what will become the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Oh my gosh, are you ready to do the page share? Here we go, Zach, let's do it.
Okay, Wilson. Well, like I said, today I want to talk about an event that occurred 57 years ago today on June 11th, 1963. On this day, George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, literally stood against integration of the University of Alabama when he stood in the schoolhouse door to prevent two African-American students from enrolling in classes. To protect the students and ensure that they had admission into the school, President John F. Kennedy mobilized the Alabama National Guard. The president also addressed the nation in a live television broadcast where he announced major civil rights legislation that would guarantee equal access to public facilities, end segregation in education, and provide federal protection of the right to vote. This legislation would eventually become known as the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The month following the president's announcement, 200,000 Americans of all races celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation by peacefully marching on Washington, D.C. It was during this march that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial.
Wow, Zach, those so much information there, but those images are iconic images that we're seeing right there, and we're kind of seeing similar things going on right now. We're going to discuss this here in just a little bit, but Zach, as always, thanks for sharing that. And again, that was 57 years ago today, right?
That's it.
Wow, it's amazing. Hey, we're going to talk more about this with Zach, the historian, coming up on Wilson's World in just a few. Hello, hi, Wilson's World here yet again. Zach, the historian, and I kind of like that we're telling you some history and some of the stuff from the historic perspective, and then we're talking about it a little bit. If you're just tuning in, a little earlier this hour, Zach was telling us that 57 years ago today was a major milestone in this country, right, Zach?
Yes, I mean, that was the day that John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States, announced on national television that he had some new civil rights legislation that once passed would eventually be called the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So it was a very big day.
We shared some of that info earlier. If you missed it, go watch it, WCCBCharlotte.com. It is, with the times that we're in, and you're seeing it every day on the show here and on the 10 o'clock news, some of those pictures you shared before were pretty iconic. We're seeing similar images these days. How do you think today, and that mark in history, how do you think that relates to today?
Yeah, that's a great point, Wilson. I mean, it's very striking if you compare those images that we saw earlier when we talked of the March on Washington, of what has happened in our recent history, not just now, but in the last couple years. We have seen large-scale protests and marches, and it's important to understand that the protests that happened in the civil rights movement, the fire that was motivating these protesters to get out and fight for civil rights, it's the same fire that's burning today and burning and causing a lot of these protests today.
It is, and seeing some of those images, and you know, and there's so many quotes that are going out there, and we see so many things from back then. It does kind of have that same feel of from then, but also now the late 60s, and we're looking into, I've heard a lot of people mention on social media 1968. This feels, and you're the historian here, but this feels more widespread. I wasn't around then. You definitely weren't. But this now, what we're in now, it feels similar, but maybe a little more widespread in different areas of the country.
Yeah, the civil rights movement was definitely all over our country, but the protesting we're seeing today, and I just saw something come out the other day that there have been protests in every one of the 50 states of the United States. I mean, and that is something historic. That truly is historic.
Well, we'll get together in 57 years and we'll talk about today.
That's right.
I hope. Listen, Zach, as always, great stuff. We will have more details linked up at WCCBCharlotte.com. And again, Zach is a historian. He does this for a living. Okay. Zach, straighten the bow tie, my friend. That's a fancy one today. Look at that. Great stuff.
Hey, thanks.
This is WCCB Charlotte, Wells' World Homeschool. We got more coming up in just a bit.